said that there's no problem with Lincoln there. I said, okay. We left it. And I was expecting people to respond to that. And there was a response. Mr. Calvin Hurston and Mr. Rita, put that on the website. And you saw there was a lot of response to it. And yet, he said, I received an email / a text stating, here is a website to the first person that Lincoln freed. Again, I'm going to get to that later on. So again, the basic disrespect for what was asked of you to do that. Yes, it's your building. But again, the bottom line is, why does he have to be there? So, we talk about that. And after having that discussion, we realized that something has to be done. And this is the foundation for where we are today. Now, if we talk about having someone who represents freedom, then we have to go further than the 1800s. We have to go back to Crispus Attucks with the Boston Massacre. The first person of color to die, and as a result of that massacre and him dying, it freed America from the tyranny of the British. So therefore, every house should have a picture of Crispus Attucks, but that doesn't happen. So we get to see why we have to stand up and be accounted for. And when we did talk about that, we go back to Lincoln. We talk about the Emancipation Proclamation. We all know that they were not free. In the states that was supposed to be, that didn't happen, because that was free. We wouldn't have the Fugitive Slave Act. You wouldn't have the Jim Crow laws. All those came after. You wouldn't have the resurgence of the KKK. So again, the misinformation to allow us to remain in a psychological bondage that you can do anything you want, how you want, and when you want. And as we continue to talk about people who, you talk about freeing the mind, body, and soul, let's talk about some of our own people who freed us. We have Harriet Tubman. We have, Booker T. Washington, the mind, the body, the soul. You have, Frederick Douglass. You also have Carter G. Woodson, who wrote the book of, The Miseducation of the Negro, which talks about our mindset. And you have the great Fannie Lou Hamer, who made it clear to say, I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired. And these are people who freed us in different areas of our freedom of being a human being, not Lincoln. So again, we move down to the point where we try to tolerate this kind of stuff. And then you have information where people will say, oh, it's just art. Well, yes, it is, but it has a message that's uncomfortable. Again, we talk about the jungle. If you cross the line of making the other person uncomfortable, then there are consequences. And here we are with the consequences of, we are saying that Lincoln isn't appropriate for here. The issue with the King Lincoln District, the King Arts Complex and Lincoln Theater, has nothing to do with Lincoln or this neighborhood being called Lincoln. It was given the name Bronzeville in 1937. And that's a different story altogether, which we'll get into later. But the term Bronzeville came from out of Chicago, where James Gentry created that to bring people together, expressing different views of African Americans. We are now putting another twist to that to simply say that that term Bronzeville means that to create bronze, you have to use different alloys, different metals. And bronze is stronger than any one of those metals by itself. So Bronzeville means that we work together, we are stronger than we are individually. And that's the new Bronzeville that we have today, that we want this to be a place that people can feel comfortable in, but there are boundaries by which we have to respect others and their differences. And that's where we are going. So when we get down to a simple matter of disrespect, this is where the disrespect comes in. And the trick bag, as we used to say, is not to, people always ask, well, what's wrong with Lincoln there? What's wrong with Lincoln there? That's not the question. The question is, why does Lincoln have to be there? See, once you start trying to defend why he's there, therefore, it becomes a no-win no-win situation. Because you can have intellectuals and PhDs debate that. The question that goes back to the artist and the owner of the building, why must Lincoln be there? And that's the question that we must ask. That's the question that we must debate. That's the question that we must stand and get answers from the owner and the artist. Now, I am sure that if we lower this to just art, I am sure if there was a picture of a lynching there, it wouldn't be there today. People be in an uproar. But lynching can be done very nicely. Of course, use nice colors and all that good stuff, the graphics, but it wouldn't be appropriate. And that's the point we're saying with Lincoln. He did what he did. And moreover than that, the real impetus for Lincoln was not slavery. It was to keep the Union together for the strength and the riches and the wealth and the resources that this country had to offer. And that was it. If he could have done it without the proclamation, he would have done it. But that was another way of the trick bag. Okay, we had the Missouri Compromise. Again, the 3/5 human. All these things in order to keep the Union for the strength and the resources to go forward. So again, I'm not going to hold you much longer, but I want, if there are any questions that we can discuss or someone have a comment, that this is, again, we're going to make this short. Now, when we start going on and the weather is better condition, we'll have more along the outdoor conversation. What we want to say that we are going to continue to push the effort to let the owner and the artist know that this is inappropriate for us here in Bronzeville today and in the future. So this is just the beginning. So our next meeting can be right here again with more people. The next meeting, we're going to do it throughout the community, but we are saying that enough is enough. We are sick and tired of being sick and tired. And that's where we stand today. So I'm going to leave it with that. Keeping in mind, the question is not what's wrong with it, but why does it have to be there in today? And I thank you for coming out, and we can take some questions and see how we can share some information or answers or something like that of that nature. Yes. Yeah, go ahead. Feel free.
Go to the mic.
Oh, here's to the mic. You can come on the ladder. Feel free.
Yeah, we can swing it around just for social distancing.
So just for a little bit of context, I was studying. I'm actually, people probably don't know me. I'm in seminary school, which is, if you did know me, it would probably be a shock. But I was doing my study today on a paper I'm writing in a liberation theology class, and it was talking about Trayvon Martin. Just for a little bit of context, and when Obama said, after the verdict was handed down, Obama asked the question if Trayvon was black, or if Trayvon was of age and was legally carrying, could he have done the same thing that Zimmerman done? And so, my question was, why are we asking could he have? It's just another layer of that. But as I was reading through the article that we were given to kind of get some further insight, I came across a quote by Benjamin Franklin. It said, and we always see Benjamin Franklin on the $100 bill when we got the song All About the Benjamins, but Benjamin Franklin said, he asked the question, why increase the sons of Africa by planting them in America when we have so far an opportunity by excluding the black and the tawny and of increasing the lovely white and red? But it's a lot of reverence for Benjamin Franklin, right? So it's like, along the same vein, we are told certain parts about the history of people that appease us, but we don't know the whole history, and it's kind of intentional, I would say.
Amen to that. So true.
So that painting can't be changed, right?
It can be.
Okay.
Yeah, it can be. The painting has already been modified several times. This is the end. You should have seen the first one. It was very different than what you see here now. So it can be changed, but we recommend that it be changed. He did do some changes, but this is what is now saying that you're going to get this, and we're not taking off Lincoln.
That's what I'm doing.
Yeah.
So Lincoln is never being changed.
That's what he's saying. It's his building, but we're saying fine. One of the things, what we're saying is he wants to keep Lincoln there, then the bottom line is that we will keep using it as a teaching to help people know that no matter how far we go in life, how many degrees we have, how many years we have, that we are still second to and have to be owing our freedom and our achievements to him. And I don't think that's true.
He's the owner.
Gentleman lives on Miami. I'll get that to you later.
I think Lincoln should stay where he's at because he is the most powerful ally. There's none. Nothing from the Africa come against us, right? You know what I mean? Abraham Lincoln is a warrior. You know what I mean? This is this developed a white power, right? They come from Europe, and they landed in America, right? And made it the most powerful country in the world.
Well, I would love to spend some time with you and share some history with you.
Yes, I'm saying we're talking about Lincoln.
Yeah.
We're putting Lincoln in a place like here, right? You know what I mean? He had to free the slave, right? Because in the South it's been powerful and powerful. It'd have been like Adolf Hitler. You know what I mean? It controlled the economic world because they had free labor. You know what I
That's
mean?
the way they made it appear.
They did it.
So it was marketing.
Huh?
It was more marketing than actually, it didn't really happen that way.
Well, how did they come so powerful? If they come from Europe, they had no power in Europe. Just like Napoleon, right? The first defeat Napoleon had was over in South America. They were defeated in Bahamas before they went to Russia.
Now, what I can say, what we're going to do at our next session, we will discuss it. We'll have a full discussion on what you're saying, and we appreciate your comments. And this is why we're here for debate and discussion, but not.
But I'm saying he's a man that's hand in time, night and day. One man went to war with his own people. You know what I mean? You're gonna let him go.
Okay, well we'll keep that for our next, and thank you very much. We'll keep that for the next discussion. I have another question. Any comments or questions that you have? Well, again, yes. Come up to the mic.
In speaking to the artist and the owner of the building, what motivational reasoning have they given for them to want to include this image in this community?
Okay. And the question was, what motivated the owner and the artist to do this? Well, what I was told, or what we were told, myself and Commissioner Mason, was that they had the King Lincoln District, so which Mayor Coleman created for an economic engine for the area, the King Arts Complex and the Lincoln Theater, and the original name of the Lincoln Theater was the Ogden Theater, and he created that, the King Lincoln District. So the owner and artist decided, well, we use King, which is Martin Luther King, and we use Lincoln as Lincoln, and say that this represents. And I said, what represents Bronzeville? He said, well, the brown people on the mural. So again, you know, comments like that is very, very left of center. That when we made it clear that the Lincoln did not represent the neighborhood. That was just the building with the Lincoln name, and that's what it was.
So you mentioned marketing, and I think that's interesting. I mean, Rita mentioned marketing, and when you mentioned Mayor Coleman and his motivation for designating King Lincoln, what that was all about. It certainly wasn't about Bronzeville.
It was an economic engine.
Because Bronzeville has been here since 1937.
Right.
This so-called assumed name or community or emerging utopia sits within Bronzeville. So we need to make that clear to those who are coming.
Well, this is a point that we took up, myself and Commissioner Mason, you know, with Mayor Coleman, that we gave him the history. When we spent years to research the Bronzeville history, the boundaries and all that. When we found it, we presented it to him, and we made it very clear that there's something before you. That, you know, to create the King Lincoln District is fine, but it has to be clear that it's inside of the Bronzeville neighborhood. It is not a neighborhood. Right. And we had many battles with them with that. So finally, we now have a legal designated boundaries that I mentioned earlier of the Bronzeville historic neighborhood now. So the King Lincoln district is within Bronzeville. You have north of Broads, you have Elijah Pierce, you have Poindexter, we have the Kier Point East, we have the neighborhood house, we have all of that inside of Bronzeville. It is one of the, we call it is the neighborhood that has all the mojo, because we have everything right here. Like it had it back in the day when, before the 30s and the 50s and so forth. We have a lot of things. We don't have as much as then, but we have a lot today that we want to develop and maintain so that it's okay for everyone as long as we are working to go forward with it. And we like to say in Bronzeville, and that they were called back then the Bronzevillians, that we don't care who gets on the bus as long as we're driving the bus. And to drive the bus means that you have a vested interest and responsibility to take the bus down the road, over the hill, and around the corners, so that those who are here, those who are not here, and those who are on their way will have something that they can latch on to.
Call me petty, but when the artistry does well, ask him to get Martin Luther King's ring on his wedding hand. Time to slap his hand again. Right hand. Call me petty. Let's just.
Again, this is the point that myself, the NEAC organizational body, the chair, and the chair of the zoning committee, and Commissioner Mason and myself, we asked for the rendering. We could have helped them identify these things, but these little things, again, is disrespectful. Countries have gone to war, people have lost their lives because of disrespect. And that's another one. So this is where, again, when you don't turn to the community, or you don't listen to those in the community, you do things like this that create a problem. And they will tell you, oh, what's wrong with that? Well, there's a lot wrong with that. And we have to make sure that we want, again, like in the jungle, we need to have respect for each other's boundaries. And when you cross that, there are consequences. It's just like, we just can't accept that. And this is where, again, we're going to be continue to having these discussions, because it needs to be told what's being done and what they're doing, and the disrespect. Again, the wedding ring. So, you know, we all know Clever Scott was married to him, no matter what the FBI says. Why wouldn't you give him that due? And again, we talk about pettiness, but those are big things. Those same pettiness can cause a lot of disruption and misinformation to the general public.
What is the significance of Emerson Burkhart?
He grew up in the neighborhood.
Yeah. And again, these are characters that he found, that he just put on there just to be put in. Again, not coming to us. Again, not coming to us saying, well, here's what I'm going to do. How can I embellish this to the next level to make it right? Again, why? Who are you that I have to come to at my building? Yes, you own the building, but when you start putting our figures on it, then that changes the ownership.
It changes the story.
It changes the whole story of everything.
So people who are newcomers to the community,
Right.
they don't know what the community stands for.
Right.
And so then these images sometimes tell the story for the new people.
Exactly.
And if the story and images are incorrect, then it tells a new story. And that's branding.
Right.
Hello, I'm Commissioner Mason at Willis. Talked about several times. The intent in this mural was to bring the community to the forefront. So the history, previous history, current history could be shown on this mural. We have many other walls that need murals also. Emerson Burkhart was part of this community. This community, as we all know, since the 20s has been predominantly African American, but there's always been a white community here. So that wall can have a white individual like Emerson Burkhart, but it also has predominantly African American. Thank you. Who is more dangerous, the racist or the race warfare? Warfare is another race. Servers didn't bow them, but following all the laws and all the powers. Now, when the air get here, right, you know, you think he's a wise man, you think he's perfect, and he had taken over your community. You know what I mean? We need your wise somewhere. We need your bank. You have nothing. That's why you suffer. You know what I mean?
And this is our next, obviously our next meeting has to deal with the history and the economics of our people in our community. And this is an important point that we will bring to bear at our next meeting. But this one is focused on this here.
Okay.
But we appreciate that.
The only economical leader you ever had was called Marcus Garvey.
Okay.
He wrote chapter after chapter on how to power.
And good. And that's another area.
But you're not following none of his book. And that's why some people in back.
Okay. And that's very true. And we have to get into that in the next meeting. We will discuss that. We appreciate that. Yeah. You have another question or another?
Yeah, he has a comment.
Oh, okay. I have a question.
I noticed that the mural popped up like around the time of the protest. I think toward the end of the protest. I'm sorry, it seems like a lot of things have happened that's kind of intentionally trying to get us to react. Do you kind of feel like this is part of like an agenda or something like that?
My personal feeling, I don't think it's that deep. It was just saying this is what we're going to do and this is how we're going to do it. So it makes it, you know, in that kind of agenda, meaning that I'm not going to be told what I'm going to do with my building. I'm going to put whatever I want, and that's just how I'm going to do it. I think it could be, but I'm just saying on the surface, that's how we're handling it with this.
Ms. Barbara, you want to say something?
One second.
You sure?
Okay. One second. Then I'll come back right back to this. Yes.
I'll make this little comment with regards to Lincoln here in the Bronzeville district. I think many years ago, and I have this article that I'm using in some of my own research that was like 1920 something in the Dispatch. And Lincoln was featured in the Dispatch as the model Christian for this community to model themselves after. And when you brought that up with regards to why the guy probably wouldn't bring Lincoln down, but Lincoln does have a very significant piece of symbolism to so many whites in the community, because he was also used for black people to model themselves after in order to be that Christian. And this was probably during the 1920s. I still have a copy of the article. I'll give it to you.
Right. And then let's think about Christopher Columbus. You know, it's history that we need to know so that we can evolve as people.
And I have no problem with that. But all I'm saying here, which is very good to know the history, again, we have to know the history so that we know how to reposition ourselves. But in that same joint, we have to also establish what is appropriate for us. And when we can know the history, we can respect that history, but what it is, we always have to feel that we have to give up what we have to accept that history or whatever feels comforting for others. Right. We have to say, this is what's comforting for us, and now learn to accept us for who we are. Why is that we always have to be the ones giving?
Amen.
And that's a very touchy thing with me, because again, you know, my background is very different. You know, I was born and raised in Harlem. You know, but when I came home from playing in the street, who was in my house talking to my mother was Malcolm X. When they were raising the monies for all the marches with King, my mother-in-law were a part of that, raising the money. They took a lot of organization for all those marches. So my conscience is very different. I was raised with understanding that it's okay to be different, but let's respect who I am. And I'm not about to give up all of what I am. But we can live together, but we have to understand that even though Lincoln did great things, so would a lot of other people. And we did a lot of great things for this country, but I bet you 5 would get you 10. You're not going to see pictures of us in other neighborhoods or the big mural. So we have to have a limit as to how we deal with that. Because it's important. I don't have nothing against Lincoln. He did what he did. And so he took his life because his own people was upset that he was going to take something from them. No different than what happened with the Capitol. No different with the Reagan, the Trump situation. All those kind of things. When people fear that you're going to take resources from them, they react. And so, yeah, we have a lot of that, but we have to understand, you know, promoting one side of history is not that well. You need to promote both sides and understand the whole concept of what the history does. So we have to understand that. Yes, sir. And I know time is getting away, so we're going to have to...
You don't act like that you're a guest in this country, that you still on the boat. But you are the host. You don't have no tax system or nothing. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
See, the young tourists cannot live by your technology.
Right.
Too old. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
Hey, they can build a house in a day.
Mm-hmm.
I called the show. I told them, we will build a warehouse 5 blocks long. And we would build a house, but there's only 4 windows. I mean, there's only 4 walls to a house and a few windows, right?
Yeah.
You can build that same house. Put it on a customized flatbed truck and take it to the job site, you know, ready for the your house.
That's right.
They can put the interior.
And this is all we're saying that we have.
We are the master architect of the world.
That's right.
Okay, we have a statement right here. Sorry.
Thank you.
Just wanted to make a statement. I grew up in this neighborhood, moved out, this is still my neighborhood. So I just need to know how we can support this.
Well, this is where we're gonna Rita and myself and others.
Put it out there.
We're gonna put it out there. We're gonna have continued sessions. And I'm president, and Dana's vice president of the Bronzeville Neighborhood Association. And we're gonna be starting. You know, we're having our meetings again. You know, with all the pandemic, we kind of backed off, and we're gonna start that again. So we're gonna be welcoming that in the process.
So the whole goal is that we are meeting today to create the conversation. This is the initial conversation so that you know every month, at least once a month, on Facebook we'll post the date and time for when we will have this conversation. But every month there'll be a conversation that adds value to what we're going to do about this wall.
And the neighborhood.
In the neighborhood. And so I think it's just like Mr. Willis had said, I think most of us know our value in our community, but I think it starts with us saving our community and having a voice, because we've been passive. In our history, we've been very passive. The only way that we're going to show that we care about our community is to show up. And so as much as we don't, we know it's cold outside, sometimes there's issues that's bigger than even the weather. So we did this purposely, knowing that the value is that it is winter, but even bigger, we care more about our community than the weather, right?
Absolutely.
And this is again, I want to thank everyone for coming out, and we'll be put it on notice for the next meeting, and we'll have more people, we'll do more things, and we're going to be getting some action. So a lot has happened.